Hello Internet, my name is Ryan Ingram and this is the House Hacking Guide. So today we're going to talk about what house hacking is. We're going to talk about house hacking single families, house hacking multifamilies, what I like to think of as the ultra house hack, and we're also going to talk about a step-by-step guide in order to help get you started as quickly as possible, because I personally think that this is the most powerful tool that you have at your disposal as a first-time home buyer or someone that's just simply trying to turn their life around financially. So without further ado, let's get into it. And to keep me accountable and to let you know that I'm not going to lose track, I have written it down on this board here where we're going to talk about the definition, single families, multifamilies, what I like to call the ultra house hack, and your step-by-step guide. So you're in good hands because I've written it on my whiteboard. So let's get started by talking about what house hacking is. This is ultimately a term that was coined by BiggerPockets, but it existed long before BiggerPockets started calling it this. Nonetheless, I think it's super catchy and it's an awesome way to get everybody on the same page and easily identify exactly what we're talking about. I've met people that did this back in the 60s and 70s before it was known as this now, but nonetheless, it's an absolutely brilliant move. So ultimately what house hacking is you occupying a property, you purchasing it to occupy it, and then you rent out either the rooms or the other units. So ultimately, you can limit your living expenses or completely wipe them out because other people are paying you to live there. Now, I've mentioned this other times on the channel, but my brother and I were able to go from 0 properties to 80 in a little bit over 3 years. And one of the main reasons that we were able to do that is because when I was 23, I accidentally house hacked. So I purchased a single family home and I had one roommate and he paid half of the mortgage. So this was not intentional. I didn't know that this term was a real thing. It just seemed like the most prudent thing to do, as the apartment that we were living in just kept raising their rents every single year. And it just got to the point where they wanted us to pay $1,300 a month to live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we said this is absurd. We could buy a house for cheaper than this, and that's exactly ultimately what we did. So when we came to that realization, I looked at him and I said, hey man, if I bought a house, would you live in it with me and pay half the mortgage? He said, sure, which, you know, didn't really change anything for him, except now he had a house, not an apartment. All right, so now that we are clear on what a house hack is, let's go ahead and mark that one through. All right, so house hacking a single family home is a little bit of an interesting concept. So you are going to buy a house, you're gonna occupy one room, and you're gonna rent out the remaining rooms. And your whole goal here is to make it worthwhile for the people that are renting the other rooms from you. So let's say your mortgage payment is $1,000 per month. Would it be reasonable if it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home? Would it be reasonable for you to occupy the master and rent out the other rooms for $500 a month? That way your mortgage payment is completely wiped out. That is completely up to your market, and you're going to have to do those analysis yourself. However, it is most certainly possible. I think this is a phenomenal option for somebody that is single or a young professional where you work closely with somebody that you also wouldn't mind living with. So if you have some other students that you're very good friends with, if like for me, when I was 23 and I bought my first house hack, I was in law enforcement at the time, and so was my roommate. So we worked opposite shifts. We only had like 6 days off per month together, so it just worked out really well. But at the same time, if you are somebody that has friends, then this is a viable option. I would just make sure that you like living with them before you invite them to live in your house and you potentially have to evict them. But ultimately, from my perspective, I think especially if you're going to share living spaces with somebody, then it's always best to know them as well as possible. So I would not necessarily be a fan of just occupying one room and then renting the other rooms out and interviewing people on like Craigslist or something, but I do know that a lot of people do that and have success with it. But don't factor in my self-limiting beliefs or my own weird things when you're analyzing your property. If you're down with that, if you think that's a good idea, then by all means go for it, because this is going to absolutely catapult you into financial freedom if you stick with this plan, because you are owning 100% of the asset and not paying for it. And you're also able to limit the amount of your monthly income that is spent on housing. Which is ultimately why house hacking is so effective, is because you get to keep 100% of the equity that is building up inside of that asset, and you're also freeing up 100% of the money that you normally spend on a monthly basis on housing. So if you're able to live for free, then that frees up what is, for most people, 25 to even 50% or greater of their monthly income. Last tip on this one. So in the scenario that we just used of the 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, I originally said that you lived in the master and rented out the other 2 rooms. But I think it would be a more subtle, but nonetheless still awesome power play if you rented out the master for a few $100s extra per month, and then lived in one of the smaller units or rooms that you also rented out the other one. So I think that is just a little bit more of a sacrifice on your end that will pay off greater later. Because, as Elon Musk once said, the amount of wealth that you create is directly proportionate to the amount of risk that you are willing to take on. So this isn't necessarily risk, but it is sacrifice, and I really think the two ultimately go hand in hand. So I think we cleared that one up. Let's check it off and go on to multifamilies. Alright, so traditional home loans allow you to buy a single family home or up to 4 units. Now, if you are buying a 4 unit, a 3 unit, or a duplex, then you could get the same amount of financing that you could on a single family. So in this scenario, it's possible that you buy a 4 unit and only have to put 5% down or less. And if you do this with a 4 unit, then the math gets really easy, and it's going to be pretty difficult to not live for free, because the other 3 units that you have rented out should more than suffice for the mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, the utilities, the lawn care. And I imagine that if you're living there, then you're going to be doing the lawn care and a bunch of the odds and ends, just the small stuff that happens to go wrong with the property while you're there. So just recently I recorded a video where I walked through a house hack of a 4 unit that my friend just finished. I'm super proud of him. I recorded this video and we walk through all of the numbers. We go through how much money it's going to make him on an annual basis, and it's really impressive. So after this video is over, I suggest that you hop over and take a look at that, just so you could see this in action and hear about one success story. Now, this scenario, buying a multifamily, I would say if you are married, if you have a kid, then this provides you a little bit more flexibility than inviting a bunch of people to live in your home. Because I know once I got married, I kicked out my roommate and I had no interest in him being anywhere around my wife and I. But again, I know other couples that are married that have people live with them. It's totally a personal preference, up to you and how much money you want to make and how much of a sacrifice and risk you want to take on. But I own a few duplexes that are very large. They're like 1,600 square feet on both sides. They have 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths. You can get some really spacious duplexes, and I think the biggest 4 unit that I've seen has been about 3 bedrooms, 3 beds, 1 bath in each unit. Now that was a massive, massive 4 unit, but nonetheless, they are out there. So if you're married, if you have 1, maybe 2 kids, then I think that would be a good option, is looking for a multifamily property that had, 2 or 3 bedrooms and, a bath and a half. But that's just my personal preference. Again, the more risk and the more sacrifice that you take early on in your life, the more rewards and the more blessings that you're gonna sow and then reap at a future date. So I definitely think this is ideal, and again, you're gonna have to work out your choice in home just via personal preference and also what is available on the market. And a quick tip on this one is I was doing some research on YouTube before I posted this video, and I came across a video by Lily Thompson. And in this video, she goes through a roadblock that she hit when she was looking to buy a multifamily to house hack. Now, her issue was very unique. It had some weird zoning things into it, but nonetheless, ultimately what she found out is that if you are working with an FHA loan to house hack, which is one of the main reasons, because you only have to put 5% down, so it makes this a very powerful strategy. But if you are buying a multifamily and you have a non-occupant cosigner on the loan, then you can no longer put 5% down. You have to put the full 25% down, which is typical for the normal investment property. So please check out her video to get more details on that. It was a really well done video. So great job on that, Lily Thompson. And you're right, no investors are really talking about that. So I think we're good here. Let's check this off and talk about what I like to call the ultra house hack. Now, the ultra house hack, I thought that sounded cool when I was recording this video, so I went with it. But nonetheless, it's, in my mind, combining the best things about both of these. So if you are single or a married couple that's down to sacrifice this much, then I think it would be a phenomenal idea to buy a 4-unit that is multiple bedrooms, so 2 or 3 bedrooms per unit, and then rent out the other bedroom of the unit that you are occupying. So let's say, it's a 2-bedroom unit. You are occupying 1 bedroom, you rent out the other, so you've got a total of 4 people renting from you, the 3 other units plus the other bedroom in your unit. Again, in the other video that I recorded about my buddy that just bought a 4-unit to house hack, I've been trying to talk him into this, but he's not he's not down for that quite yet. But nonetheless, I think it's a giant power play. And that's what it is in a nutshell. I just think you should go big, which is a 4-unit, and I think you should sacrifice a lot, which means you should take on a roommate. Or if the roommates are down, put 2 beds in their bedroom. Or hey, double bunk yours too. Get as many people in there as possible that you can deal with, because the cool thing about this whole process is in the beginning you're going to be sacrificing a lot, but then as you start reaping the benefits of this decision you've made, then unless something goes horribly wrong in your life, like bankruptcy, losing everything, or divorce, something crazy like that, then you're probably not going to have to sacrifice at this level again. When my wife and I moved up to Ohio from North Carolina, we moved into a really small, like 700 square foot house. At the time, we had our son, who was the oldest, and now he's only 3, even still. So we're about to have 4 kids in November, and they're all going to be under 4. So my son is 3, and shortly after we moved into the 700 square foot house, we had my oldest daughter, and right before we moved out, we had my youngest daughter. So we had 3 kids inside of this tiny little 700 square foot 2-bedroom house. Again, we just moved in January of this year, but nonetheless, I get a little bit sad each time I look back at the pictures of my kids and see them in this just super small house, where when we had our family up for Thanksgiving, people were sitting on the floor because we just didn't have enough seats in that house. If all goes well, we're never going to have to sacrifice like that again. So my wife doesn't necessarily miss those days. I also think that in a weird way, I do miss them because we've just kind of graduated from that spot, and we're not going to have to sacrifice like that again. But while we were there, we were able to save so much money. And we were able to just, go. That's one of the plays that we did that helped us go from 0 units to 80 units in just a little bit over 3 years. So I think this is an absolute power play, and I think that everybody should do it. I think if you haven't purchased your first property yet, then this should be the type of property that you're looking for. I think if you are in a financial spot that you don't want to be in, then I definitely think that this is something that can very quickly help you turn around your financial situation. Because if you are able to purchase a home, then you're also able to purchase a 4-unit. There's really not much difference, especially since you're able to get this on an FHA or VA loan and you have to put 5% down or less. This is truly an opportunity that you do not want to pass up. That brings us to the step-by-step. So what I would highly recommend that you do, and none of these are in any particular order, you might already know some of these and you might not. So the first thing that I would do is I would take a look at your credit and figure out if you are able to get a pre-approval letter from a lender. Now, I wouldn't necessarily immediately, if you haven't identified a property, I wouldn't suggest that you start here because pre-approvals do run out, and each time a pre-approval happens, they have to run your credit. So I wouldn't necessarily get a pre-approval letter to start, but I would definitely want you to understand how much you could qualify for so that you could limit the scope of what you're looking for. Because if you only qualify for $200,000, then there's no real need in looking at a $400,000 property. So that would just help you narrow your search down, and I think just based on some quick calculations that some lenders can do, they could take your income and just give you a ballpark. So I would start there, is get a ballpark or pre-approval from a lender. The second thing that I would do is research. I would look at all of the available multifamilies and single families in your area, and I would figure out what is best for this particular type of model. So for single families, you're not going to look at your personal preference, because if there's a property that's available for $200,000, that's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but for $150,000, you can get a 5-bedroom, 1-bath. Well, how much sacrifice are you willing to make? Run the numbers on both and figure out which would benefit you most in the long term. Which is a perfect segue into the third thing, which is run the numbers. And I would say run the numbers too many times. You want to get extraordinarily familiar with how analyzing rental properties works, especially analyzing rental properties from a house hacking perspective. So I've recorded a video on how to calculate the numbers on a rental property, and I would just add the estimated rental value in order to figure out how a house hack would work. So if you're doing a single family, then you're not going to take the market rent. You're going to have to figure out what 1-bedroom rents for in your area and use that as part of your equation, not the average rental rate for the market. But if you are renting to friends, then you don't necessarily need to concern yourself too much with the market rates that could go for. You just need to figure out or kind of sell a few of your friends on living with you for X number of dollars per month. And a win-win scenario would be they couldn't live anywhere else cheaper, and you would be living for free. And the last thing, and probably the most important thing that you should be doing, is finding a mentor, or if nothing else, just bare bones, a group of people that are also interested in real estate investing or turning around the financial aspect of their life. And I'm not necessarily saying that you need to replace all of your friends, but being actively involved in a community of like-minded people is one of the most powerful things that you can do. If you hadn't read the book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, I highly recommend that you start there. That does a much better job than I could ever do at explaining the importance of surrounding yourself with like-minded people, all on a similar path to reach a particular goal, because everybody is going to be able to help each other somewhere along the way, and you're going to be able to circumvent years of mistakes and trial and error by the collective knowledge and wisdom of all of the people that you've kind of built your network around. I've recorded one video called Level Up Your Network, and I think if nothing else, that might be a good place to start if you have stumbled across this video and you don't have anybody in your friend circle that has thought about this, talked about this, or has expressed any interest in building wealth or becoming a real estate investor. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And again, if you haven't already, I would highly recommend that you watch this video where I walk through a successful house hack that a friend of mine did. And just the numbers will blow your mind, and I can't wait to hear of you having the same amount of success. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am in a blessed position where all I do all day is talk to real estate investors about strategy and their investments. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Again, I can't say thank you enough for how quickly this channel is growing. So please subscribe, and if you think you have a friend that would like this video, please don't hesitate to share it with them. Thanks so much. Talk to you guys soon.